You're taking a look right now live at Sci-Ho's screen, and hopefully this time you guys can hear us. We're going to be cutting back to our studio, the Topcoder Open studio right now, and I am joined by the one and only Tim Kirchner, T-Mac, the competition administrator. Tim, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, good to be here.
Awesome. So I brought you here for a couple reasons. One, because you probably know way more about what's going on right now
You'd be
than
surprised.
I do. All right, well,
We'll learn together.
Yeah, so... sorry, we keep having Jesse coming in and telling us that we're doing things wrong, but I don't think we are. I refuse to believe that we are.
We should probably say, for the sake of our viewers, that we're literally like 10 feet in any direction from all sorts of stuff going on. So the level of distractions and interaction we're experiencing here is enormous.
Yeah, it basically goes to show that we're not at all professional.
Yeah, basically.
So
well,
Tim,
you know what? We're not up in the isolation booth, up in the cushy loft with the buffet, talking about the game. We're right here on the field.
Yes, that's very true. We are the sideline reporters in a studio. So Tim, marathon match. It's been going now for about an hour and 20 minutes.
Yep.
Tell me about what they're working on, because we could use the explanation. We saw Sci-Ho was writing a function called explode.
Yes.
And I want to know why he's trying to explode things.
Well, there are explosions in this. The problem this time is based loosely upon kind of an old school video game called Bomberman. And the idea being that there are walls and there are places you can set off bombs, and the goal is to explode walls. The way the problem is scored is you get more points for exploding more walls at the same time. Bombs that are close to each other can set each other off. So depending on where you take your time to place your bombs and kick off the explosions, you can really optimize some chain reactions and try to explode a whole bunch of stuff at once.
Cool. So that looks like I've seen some of the visualizer. Let's cut over to Sci-Ho's screen real quick, if I can find it. Oh boy.
I think it's the one with the Sci-Ho screen right there.
That's it. A moment ago, we did have the visualizer up. It looks like there's a tool that's helping them see how their algorithm is performing right now.
So what that actually does is it's also exciting for spectators too
here we go.
on the mirror
It's up on the
displays.
screen
There you
now.
go, excellent. Yeah, what that actually allows is they can kind of see what their algorithm is doing visually, and especially when you're starting out, that's a good way to grok in your head what's actually happening, what's working, what's not working. Sometimes just looking at lines of code and looking at debug output on your screen isn't really going to tell you everything you need to know. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Absolutely.
That's what the visualizer's all about.
Right. So it looks like it's a grid. Is the problem structured in such a way where they're trying to solve it for this grid?
Exactly, yeah. It's like a lot of marathon problems. I know sometimes it can get a little boring, but it's on a two-dimensional grid. Partly that's because it displays on screen really well too. We would have a hard time, for instance, visualizing a four-dimensional space on the screen.
Oh yeah.
But
is the grid size random? I just saw a much larger grid come up briefly.
Yeah, the sizes of the grid. There's a much larger one right now. In fact, the size of the grid is different per test case. So it's the same problem, but there are different test cases, which will have different configurations, different grid sizes.
Are the configurations always the same, or are they randomized?
Okay, so for each test case, it will always be the same configuration. That way, the test cases upon which the competitors are being judged, they will all have exactly the same set of test cases.
Right. So they all have the same knowledge, and it levels the playing field.
Exactly. Each test case itself, though, is generated what's called procedurally. For those folks into gaming out there, procedural generation is where, rather than predefining how every level or how every case looks, we define a certain set of rules that each different case will follow, and then randomly pick something that matches those rules.
Yeah, so it's basically like Diablo, like a map in Diablo from our wonderful sponsor, Blizzard Entertainment.
Good plug.
Yes,
I like it.
I know. I'm almost a professional. It's almost like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I would think that you actually do. I'm impressed.
Cool. So, what else can you tell me about the problem?
Sure.
It seems like an interesting one for sure.
It is, and for those folks who are familiar with marathons or who have done a few, they may know that a lot of our problems are scored based upon sort of efficiency, where you're trying to do things in the least number of moves. This problem actually breaks away from that mold, where you're not scored based upon how many moves you make, giving you some flexibility to actually do longer paths and try to set up more complicated reactions. So we're hoping that slight change of pace at least makes things interesting for folks.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about our featured competitors a bit. You have been involved in running marathon matches for years.
A very long time.
How many
yes.
TCOs is this for you now?
This is my 8th TCO that I've been on
All right,
site.
number 8 for T-Mac here. So he's seen some of these guys compete pretty extensively.
Correct.
We talked yesterday about the competitors. You told me Saiho was the favorite coming in. Is that still the case this morning?
He's competed in 9 TCOs and he's won 4 of them. With a second
pretty
place
good win rate.
and 3 more where he came in second.
Yeah.
That overall result is miles ahead of anyone else in the field, for better or worse.
Yes, and I saw earlier that he has a win in a marathon match as recently as September of this year. So clearly he's doing pretty well. Right now.
Absolutely. He's at a point now where he's confident enough in his abilities that he won't actually necessarily compete in every marathon match unless it either really interests him or he really thinks he's a chance of doing well. So yeah, it's not surprising to see him winning pretty frequently.
We can see him there, crank at the top of his head as he cranks away.
Yeah, one of the big challenges for competitors, especially over a problem that lasts for 10 hours, is sort of that sense of focus and being able to really stay in with their head in the game for that entire length of time.
Right. And this year it's 10 hours. The previous years it's been longer, correct?
For a while we were doing 12 hours. The first couple of years we ran it, we only did 8. There was one year we did a 24-hour marathon match. That was in Vegas in 2010, I believe.
Do you know how Saiho performed that year?
I can't recall offhand who won that year, although I do remember the 3 or 4 folks who actually made it the full 24 hours were certainly looking worse for the wear by the end of it. Saiho himself came up to me afterwards with his various thoughts and comments, and among everything else said, whatever we do next year, no 24 hours.
I can see that kind of ruining your trip. One of the cool prizes, one of the cool things about coming to TCO is the fact that you get a free trip. And if you're spending 24 hours of it coding, I can't imagine that being the most fun
reality
thing.
for a lot of competitors is they spent that 24 hours coding, slept the next day, woke up for the third day to see the conclusion, basically, and kind of missed everything in between.
Yeah, then flew straight home. So taking another look at Saiho's screen here, we'll be switching over to our other competitor in just a moment. Oh, there it is, actually. So we're going to discuss our second featured competitor.
The problem is different test cases are easier or harder than others. Some may be possible to score more points than others. So what we do is we actually scale that out relatively. We take whoever is the best person for each individual test case, call that a perfect score. So a score of 1 million on the leaderboard represents Merrick actually has the best score on each of the test cases that he's been tested against.
And that is all relative to the other competitors.
Relative to the other competitors.
He hasn't perfected the problem.
It's basically impossible to perfect the problem.
Right.
At least before the heat death of the universe. However, so all the other scores then are scaled off of that. So that means Saiho, who is in second place right now, pardon that we had to change his handle for various technical reasons. That means on average he's doing slightly worse than half as well as Merrick on each and work with that. So it's not uncommon at all, only an hour and a half in, to say, you know what, I don't like how my approach is going. I'm going to just throw this out and try something completely different.
Right. So now we're showing Merrick on the feed. Really cool story about this competitor. He's actually he has his doctorate, and he's working right now at the University of Warsaw in Poland, where he just secured a 1.5 million euro grant to do algorithm research.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
I read that this morning. I got sent out. Very cool thing. Glad we can show him here, show how he's thinking about this. Clearly, the guy knows what he's doing.
Where we're not allowing folks to bring their own machines.
Right, and there are reasons for that.
There are reasons for that, and we'll talk about that.
Yes, I think that's some great content.
I'm assuming we don't have a time limit at the moment, so we'll just kind of keep dribbling on for a while.
If you can keep running your mouth, we can keep going.
I can keep running my mouth for a very long time. My problem is I don't shut up. So for many of the other contests, it's about creativity, it's about how you approach the problem, it's about how you work. In Marathon, there's a certain advantage to be gained by running what we call local tests, where they'll have, even beyond what the tests are in the system, they'll come up with their own test cases locally and just keep bashing their solution against it, running hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of tests to try to figure out what small improvements are actually a little bit better or a little bit worse. When they actually submit to our system right now, they're, I believe, getting 50 test cases that it's testing against. But in the grand scheme of things, that's actually a very small number. It is possible, over the course of 50 test cases, to have some statistical deviations towards certain types of test cases over others. When we do the final testing after the round is over, it'll be a much larger set of cases, based upon how much time we have. But what they're planning for is they want a solution that's going to do as good as possible over the widest range of test cases.
Right. Now, when you're testing these, the big test that determines the winner, that runs. Does that run for the full day? We have a whole day off. Day and a half off.
Yeah, that will essentially run for about 24 hours once this ends.
Right. So they're going to really put these guys through the ringer.
Yeah, we're gonna. We don't know how many test cases we'll do. It depends on how fast they run. But we'll get as many as we can in there to try to make the results as fair as possible.
Right. And speaking of results, we're now sharing an updated leaderboard so you can get an idea where things are looking. Merrick is still sitting at the top of the leaderboard right now relative to the competition. Saiho sitting in second place. LD coming from France, trailing him by just a little bit. And then W. Lati and Catalan T. Looks like they haven't submitted in quite a while, so that's going to be...
Sometimes that's okay, though. You'll notice there's 8 competitors out there, only 5 have submitted anything. But that's not to say that people aren't working on the problem. They're working on their local machine very, very hard.
They choose when to submit code to get the score updated, so that could have been a hello world statement for all
and
we
in
know.
fact, for Vladimir Late and Catalan T, they're... Oh, we just had... Late just made another submit and pushed himself a little bit up. Yeah, their submissions both came within the first few minutes of the match. Just something very basic to make sure that their code actually ran.
Right.
But what you'll see is that submitting on the leaderboard is not necessarily a huge advantage for these guys. What that does is it tells them how they're doing relative to everybody else. However, others have pointed out to me that knowing how you're doing relative to everyone else doesn't necessarily help you improve your solution. In a lot of cases, it only tells you information that you're not prepared to do anything about. Knowing that you're behind isn't going to suddenly make you have a better idea. Knowing that you're in the lead isn't necessarily going to make you feel that much more comfortable. But every now and again, I guess it's nice to get a benchmark. You see that if you're way ahead of people or way behind people, maybe other folks have found something that you haven't thought of yet. Gives you an idea of what to look for.
Cool. Well, tell me a little bit more about the leaderboard screen that we're showing right now. I know we've talked about the points and what it means.
Absolutely.
How about number of example
Yeah,
and number
absolutely.
of full?
So we offer 2 types of testing during the competition. Example testing is a small set of test cases, I believe it's 10 this time, where they will actually get back an individual score for each of those cases, and it will actually tell them their debug output, anything that they're printing to the screen while their solution is running. So that gives them a fairly detailed amount of information for those 10 test cases. The full submission is a larger set of 50 test cases. The only thing they get back, though, is a final score for those 50. They get no detailed information whatsoever. But nonetheless, the score they get from the full, it gives them a better idea of where they really stand. And the points you see listed in the leaderboard there are actually based upon only the full cases. Example cases are only in place for the competitors to use.
Excellent.
But note that I mentioned the local testing. You'll see that a few of these guys submitted one example test case. You're not going to see a whole lot more of those. Because they can actually do all that testing on their own machine. Once they've done an example test, just to confirm that their code actually runs on the server properly, they're going to do all their example testing locally, where they can control timing, they can look at even more detail, they can do more than just 10 cases. They're going to really put their own solutions through the ringer before they submit them.
Okay, very cool stuff. So if anyone in the chat is watching, tuning in, if you have any questions for Tim about the marathon match, we'd be happy to answer them. You gotta get him in quick because this guy is pretty busy. He has to do all, he's our leaderboard guy. He's gonna handle all these big test cases that determine the winner. So it's a great opportunity to have Tim on if you have any questions for him.
While I'm here, I'm going to take just an aside from the marathon stuff for a quick shout out.
Oh,
totally
please
unrelated
do.
to everything here. But for those, especially if you're in the United States or familiar with United States sports, today my son is playing American football for his state championship title on his varsity team. So go Bobcats and good luck today.
All right, go Bobcats. I'll cheer for that too.
Thank you very much.
I hope he does well.
Yeah, I'm hoping I can find a live stream of it. I'll probably get that on one of the screens here at some point.
Okay.
Because I do things like that.
If you turn this live stream off, you mean? Because this one is can't miss TV.
Oh no, I absolutely. I mean, I'm going to have it on screen here for my own advantage. I'm guessing most of the folks here probably are not as interested and invested in that as I am, but that's okay.
That's all right. You gotta root for your boy.
That's right. Go Cam.
Cool. And I actually have a special treat here for Diana Luca, who's been active in our chat since last night.
Okay.
A big fan of Catalan Tea. So I figured I'd give you a little shot of him working away. He's your favorite. He's your pick to win. We have him.
He would be actually extremely excited to know that somebody is rooting for him. I bet he's. This is his second year on site at the marathon. He's, relative to some of these folks, a newer competitor, but one of the more enthusiastic and just really an all-around great guy. I've enjoyed getting to know him, and he's here having a good time. Whether win, lose, or otherwise, he's gonna have a good time with this.
Yeah, we will give him. We'll let him know that you were cheering for him. And when he's done, so it won't be for quite a while until he's done.
Yeah, I did get a question from a few of the competitors this morning asking how the lunch break is going to work. It is in our rules that the lunch break is mandatory. That way, they all are away from their desks for the same amount of time. But our schedule here shows an hour-and-a-half long lunch, and there was some concern that do we actually have to spend an hour and a half at lunch? And the typical rule we've implemented in previous years, which will be the same this year, is that once everybody is done eating, they can all return. I suspect somewhere around 12:07, they're going to have shoved down their food and want to get back to work. You'll probably see several of those guys at lunch with notepads and pencils, silently scribbling stuff. Nobody will talk to each other. It's kind of a surreal experience, really.
That's poor guys aren't even going to taste the food go down. It's going to go so fast for them.
Exactly. You do have the wrong screen up, though. I am not
Cool.
Nick Castillo.
No, you're not Nick Castillo. You are Tim Kirchner.
In fact, I am. I mean, some folks could confuse us. We look and sound exactly the same. There's Nick now. Yeah, he has no idea what we're talking about. It's great.
No, that's fine though. Cool. Well, I've seen a couple shout-outs in the chat. I haven't seen any questions for Tim, so I think with that we can cut you loose for a little
Catalan
bit.
is her boyfriend.
Well,
okay.
it must be nice to know.
Now we know what's going on. Okay.
You've got the girlfriend sharing feedback at home.
Saiho has his significant other here with him as well.
I remember,
he always does.
And she was actually active on our stream last year, I recall.
She was, and at one point she was considering becoming active on Topcoder, but withdrew from that because didn't want to create a conflict of interest. But she's certainly a very smart individual herself.
Very cool. Well, Tim, we're gonna go to break. We're gonna come back. We're gonna have some design semifinal coverage.
Jesse is actually chatting on, and I'm learning something. Apparently, it's boxed lunches saying they can eat at their desk. So you know what's gonna happen? They're gonna go up. They're gonna grab their boxed lunch, and they're gonna come down.
Maybe it'll be a delivery service.
And
maybe we'll bring them their food.
The desks are going to be disgusting with food crumbs by the end of the day, but that's okay. I'm a programmer myself. I understand how that goes. So it should be a good time.
Cool.
Great. Well, that means I don't have to sit there awkwardly for half an hour. So
yeah,
that's not
that
a bad
is
thing.
always the most awkward part of the day.
It really is.
Cool. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us and giving us the run through. Maybe we'll talk to you again tonight when the marathon's wrapping up.
I'm hoping, maybe tonight, right after dinner, coming into that last hour or so, it'd be great to talk again and see where things are.
Very cool. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back in a few minutes with design coverage. So we will see you then. All right, we are back. I am joined now by Trevor and Luis, two guys who know way more about design than I do, because I'm pretty clueless on this stuff.
That is so not true.
Trevor is one of our creative directors at Topcoder, and Luis is a longtime studio co-pilot. Runs a lot of cool challenges on the Topcoder platform. Thank you for joining us, guys.
That's what I say. No, thank you for inviting us here. Such an honor. I didn't expect to be here.
Of course you did. You've been here, what, 8 times now, is it? Something like that?
Eight times in TCOs so far.
Yeah, as a competitor first, and then as a co-pilot?
Yeah, 3 times as a competitor. Actually 4, but the first one I couldn't come because I didn't have passport, visa, anything of that, so I missed that one in 2007. And then as a blogger, guest, and co-pilot.
Right, and Luis is blogging this year's TCO, right?
Yeah.
So you put up a post this morning, and it was a good one too.
Great
So you guys
post,
check
great
that out.
post, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you for reading.
Yeah.
Besides you, my mother, and Nick, I have like 4 readers now.
4, yeah. 3 of it's
growing.
right here.
Growing.
I mean, I only skimmed it. Don't get too excited.
Great title.
Cool.
Great title.
So right now we've got 5 designers, Group 1 of the UI Design Semifinals running.
Yeah.
They have a pretty complex problem.
Extremely complex.
So can you guys tell me a little bit about what they're doing? I saw you guys in a conference room talking for a long time last night about the problems.
Yeah, so we started last night. So we actually gave them basically what they're working on today. We told them about it last night. So they can kind of get an idea of what they're working on, ask questions. We have our client is here at TCO.
And who is that client?
So we have Ryan from GE,
All right.
GE Transportation.
Cool. It's General Electric, guys. That's a kind of a big company. You may have heard of it.
Yeah, so this is actually a real world problem. It's a real problem that their internal team is currently trying to solve along with our Topcoder designers. So it's pretty cool. It's extremely collaborative. Last night there were a ton of questions, a ton of head scratching, trying to figure things out. So the kind of the challenge that they're working on today is about trains and a dispatcher for those trains. So a dispatcher basically needs to sit down at his desk, have an idea of 20 to 30 trains, all of their routes, any conflicts along those routes from now until 8 hours in the future. And so they can't rely on interactivity, they can't rely on clicking something to see additional information. It needs to be kind of a one-shot view.
Cool. So we're talking like a single screen application.
Yeah, so the designer's actually only designing a single screen.
But it sounds like a pretty complex screen. How many trains can there be concurrently? On these
20 to
tracks?
30 over an 8-hour period.
And they must share tracks, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, so a dispatcher is kind of only responsible for one territory, which one territory could have 1 or 2 tracks in it. So you can imagine trying to show 20 to 30 things across one path, basically.
Cool. Luis, how would you solve it?
That's a very interesting question for one of the finalists. Luckily for me, I'm not one of them. I just have to say that last night, when they were receiving the brief information in the room, I was outside, like watching, and I just saw their faces. Like there was a guy with a chalkboard and drawing, Ryan and stuff, and their faces were like, what is this? Is it like rocket science? They look really worried, and I went inside and I wanted to listen to the problem, and I realized that why those faces, because it was a really interesting and challenging problem. Because it's not about design, actually. It doesn't matter if you are the best doing icons, the best doing user interfaces. It's about solving a problem. A problem that has to be represented graphically, of course, but it's more about how you solve this problem, what approach do you take. And it's very interesting what they're going to come up with, because it's really challenging. Cool. I think from all the TCOs, I can say that this is one of the most challenges, of course, that I've seen in history.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting because it's a UI design competition, but we're not necessarily concerned as much about the UI and making it pixel perfect and beautiful. We're really looking for great solutions. We're not really looking at so much how it looks. It's really how can you display the data.
Cool. I feel like that's kind of the next level stuff. Making an icon is one thing, but actually
Right.
solving a problem is another
And
thing.
a real world problem with real consequences, and something that's actually happening right now.
So, if the winning member here does a really good job and they do something that GE just falls in love with,
Yes.
there's a chance that this could come to life.
Yes, yeah. So there's a current version of what they are designing now that's actually in the wild. The dispatchers are using it currently, but it's so confusing.
I bet.
It's not related to geography, which is another big aspect of this. So train lines actually on geography in like a state or a country. So the current implementation doesn't account for geography. So you can imagine viewing 30 trains and seeing that there could be a potential crash, but you have no idea where that crash could happen. You know that it could happen in 5 hours, but you don't know where, which is a real issue.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
As someone who rides trains.
Right. So that's part of what we're trying to solve here.
So, is there a specific kind of type of train that we're looking at? Are we talking like subway systems, or maybe is it more like long distance rail?
Yeah. So not so much subway, but more kind of countrywide freight.
Okay.
And potentially like long distance commuter trains, so something like Amtrak or similar.
All right. Well, what do you say we check in on the members and see
Yeah,
how they're
yeah,
doing?
let's see how they're
Let's cut over, take a look here. That's probably not the best camera view. I guess we don't have the best angle on these guys. They are on the other half of the building from the marathon match competitors, so we're not seeing a great shot there. But what I can show you. Light on that?
Yeah, so there's two groups, and what's different, I think, is that both groups are actually working on the same problem. So we have our semifinals now. Later we'll have our semifinals too. And the second group will actually be working on this exact same problem. So they're actually able to see currently what is happening in the semifinal one.
Does that give them an advantage, you think?
I think what it does do is show them the thought process that have already happened and potentially push them to think of new ideas. So it's kind of a way to push beyond what maybe the first initial ideas might be. So I think semifinal 2 will actually be really interesting to watch.
So we go through the semis. We have the 2 groups.
Yep.
How are the competitors picked for the final round?
So the final round, so it's really just based. We're judging within their individual groups.
Okay.
So they're all working on the same problem, but they're only being judged within their own groups.
And how many qualify out of each group?
So there are 8. So there'll be 8 that
finalists.
qualify. Yeah. So
Okay.
we'll eliminate 1 from each group in the semifinals.
I thought it'd be rough though.
Yeah,
The one.
yeah. So everyone's
Cool.
pulling for it.
Yeah. All right. And then will they be given feedback to take in the
Yes.
final round?
Yeah, so feedback will be a part of it. The final round may be an extension of this, depending on kind of what we get out. So we have a few different ideas of what the final round can be. So it could potentially be an extension of the problem they're working on now. Or we have a few other options of other aspects of this same application that they could potentially be working on. So it's a little bit up in the air right now, but it should be fun.
Cool. Well, I'm certainly excited to see how that all
Yeah.
plays out.
Very excited.
Do you guys have a favorite? Do you guys have a guy, someone in mind that you think is gonna take this?
I don't know. Ravi June came in pretty confident this morning, so I'm excited I'm excited to see what he designs in the second.
Cool. What about you,
semifinal.
Luis? Who
Yeah,
do you
no,
like?
For me personally, it's really too soon to have a favorite.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard
Yeah,
to make a decision
yeah.
at this stage.
I don't know. It sounds like a cop out to me, but I'll let it. Cool. Well, thanks for the update, guys.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we can bring you guys back to talk some more about the second round tonight,
Yep.
and we'll go in depth. Anyone you want to say hi to, or any shout outs? Any
Hi.
members or family, friends?
My family's probably not watching.
I know.
Mine either.
Cool. Well, with that, hey guys, thank you very much for the time right now. We're gonna go to another break, and we'll be back in a little
Perfect.
bit to wrap up
Sweet.
our coverage for from the morning of TCO 2016. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you
Right.
tonight.
Thank you.